Welcome, welcome, welcome to the deep dive. Imagine stepping into, say, a bustling school cafeteria. You're hungry, you see the dessert bar. Are you going for the fresh fruit? Or, I don't know, are those crispy French fries just calling your name?
hmm
What if I told you that choice might have less to do with your willpower, really, and more with the order those things are presented in?
Yeah, the layout.
Or maybe you're signing up for something online and there's a box that's already pre-checked for you, setting a default option.
Right. Happens all the time.
That tiny, almost invisible design choice, it can really influence your decision, even if opting out is just, a simple click away.
It's absolutely true. And these aren't just random things happening. They're often deliberate, subtle design choices. It's all part of what we call choice architecture. And yeah, they shape our decisions in ways we often don't even consciously notice.
Absolutely. So today, our deep dive is into a really foundational book that unpacks all this, Nudge, the final edition by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein.
A brilliant pair.
And this isn't just theory, right? It's about understanding those hidden forces shaping our everyday choices. What we eat, how we save for retirement, even bigger things impacting society and, well, the planet.
Exactly. And crucially, how these forces can actually be harnessed for good.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this final edition is how it even came about. The original Nudge was published way back 2008.
Ages ago in internet time. To put it in perspective, like Taylor Swift was just 19, no Grammys yet.
Wow.
And Greta Thunberg was only 5 years old.
That really puts it in context.
Yeah, and Thaler himself had just gotten his first iPhone, Sunstein, his first BlackBerry. The financial crisis was just starting to loom. And Barack Obama, who later brought these ideas into government with nudge units, he was still challenging Hillary Clinton for the nomination. So yeah, a lot has changed.
So after all that time, why revisit it? You'd think they might just leave it.
Well, it seems even the authors fell prey to something they write about extensively in the book. Status quo bias.
Huh. You mean they just didn't want to mess with it?
Pretty much. They said they were, quote, not much inclined to tinker with it. They're human too.
Right.
Actually took something pretty mundane. Their old paperback contracts expiring in the US and UK too, as they put it, induced them to emerge from their slumber.
So the publishers asked if they wanted to update it.
Yeah, add a chapter, make some changes, and their first reaction was basically, nah. Theller's famously pragmatic, maybe a bit lazy about revising.
And Sunstein could probably write a whole new book in that time.
Exactly. But they did decide to do it, and they made this very deliberate commitment.
By calling it the final edition.
Precisely. They're essentially nudging themselves not to tinker with it again. It's their own commitment strategy in action.
That's brilliant. A perfect little self-referential example of their own concepts.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the core idea, the foundation for everything else, is this concept of choice architecture. It's the understanding that basically any environment where you make a decision, a cafeteria layout, a website interface, a government form, it has a structure.
It has a design.
Right. And that structure, that design, inevitably influences the choices people make. There's just no neutral design. It's impossible.
Okay, so if design always influences us, what's their guiding philosophy for how to design? They use this term that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, libertarian paternalism.
Yeah, it does sound contradictory at first glance.
Libertarian makes you think freedom, paternalism, sounds like guidance, maybe even control. How do they square that circle?
That's the cleverness of it. The libertarian part is really crucial. It insists people should always be free to choose what they want. They should be able to opt out of any arrangement easily without significant cost or burden, as long as they aren't harming others. Liberty preserving is key.
Okay, so freedom of choice is paramount. Where does the paternalism come in?
The paternalism lies in the idea that choice architects, the people designing the systems, should try to steer people gently in directions that will likely make their own lives better as judged by the people themselves.
So it's not forcing, it's nudging.
Exactly. It's a soft, non-intrusive approach. Think of it like a GPS suggesting a route, but you can always ignore it and go your own way. It's about helping people make the choices they'd probably make for themselves if they had, unlimited time, perfect information, and superhero-level self-control.
Okay, that makes sense. It's helping, not hurting. So if that's the framework, how do these nudges actually work on us, on the humans of the world? I assume humans is a key term here.
Oh, absolutely fundamental. The book kicks off by drawing this sharp distinction between econs and humans.
Econs being?
Econs are those hypothetical, perfectly rational beings from traditional economic textbooks. They make flawless forecasts, always choose optimally, never suffer from biases. Think Mr. Spock.
Pure logic.
Your logic, yeah.
And humans. That's us, right? With all our quirks.
That's us. We're fallible. We make predictable mistakes. But the insight isn't to call people dumb or irrational. That's not the point.
Right.
It's acknowledging that life is hard, is complex, and we rely on mental shortcuts, heuristics, to get by. Sensible shortcuts, usually.
But sometimes they lead us astray.
Exactly. In predictable ways. That's the key. It's like Homer Simpson trying to navigate the world. He's doing his best, but he's prone to certain kinds of errors.
They have that amazing visual illusion to illustrate this, the shepherd tables. Tell us about that.
Oh, it's fantastic. You see two drawings of tabletops. One looks long and skinny. The other looks short and wide.
Right. They look completely different.
They do. Your brain insists they're different. But geometrically, they're absolutely identical in size and shape.
Seriously?
Seriously. Even brilliant people, Einstein, Steve Jobs, anyone, their visual system would be fooled. Thaler tells this great story about showing it to Sunstein.
Yeah.
Sunstein immediately grabbed his chopstick to measure them on the paper because he couldn't believe they were the same.
That's perfect.
It perfectly shows how our systems, even our usually reliable visual system, can systematically go wrong in certain contexts. And if that's true for vision, it's also true for judgment and decision-making.
So it's those predictable errors, those biases and blunders that make us, well, mudgeable. Let's dig into some of these. Where do they start?
They kick off with anchoring. This is where some initial piece of information, often just a number, can heavily influence our later judgments, even if that number is totally irrelevant.
Like that crazy Attila the Hun phone number thing.
Exactly that. So if I ask you to think of the last 3 digits of your phone number,
Okay.
and then ask, did Attila the Hun sack Europe before or after that year AD? And what's your best guess for the year? What happens is, even though your phone number has nothing to do with the Huns,
Right. Obvious.
people whose numbers end in, say, 800 or 900 will guess dates hundreds of years later than people whose numbers end in 100 or 200.
Wow. Just because that number was put in their head first.
Yeah, the mind latches onto it as an anchor and adjusts, but usually not enough. By the way, the answer is 452 AD.
Good to know. And they connect this to everyday things like taxi tipping.
They do. You know, taxi drivers were initially wary of credit cards because of the fees, but then they noticed tips often went up. Why? Because the payment screen often presented pre-calculated options.
Right, like 15%, 20%, 25%, or choose your own amount.
Exactly. And those numbers act as anchors. Many people just hit the middle one, maybe 20%, which might be higher than they'd have tipped in cash. It subtly nudges the average tip upwards.
And that choose your own amount option. It feels like a choice, but it's often harder, right? You're in a rush, you don't want to do math.
Precisely. Clicking a button is just easier. It minimizes that cognitive friction.
But it's not always straightforward. Didn't they find higher defaults could sometimes backfire?
That's a really interesting nuance.
Yeah.
Yes, economist Kareem Hagag found that while higher defaults, say 20, 25, 30%, did generally raise overall driver earnings.
Okay.
They also increased the number of people who gave no tip at all. 0.
Why would that happen?
It's likely related to something called reactance. If people feel like they're being pushed too hard or the options feel unfair or aggressive,
They might just dig their heels in.
yeah, they might get annoyed and just say, forget it,
Yeah.
and tip nothing, just to assert their autonomy. So the nudge has to be subtle enough not to trigger that kind of backlash.
Fascinating. Okay, what about when our memories play tricks? Let's talk availability bias. Quick quiz. In the U.S., more gun deaths from homicide or suicide?
Okay, well, my gut reaction, probably based on news coverage, would be homicide. Seems like you hear about those more.
That's what most people guess, relying on that availability heuristic, what comes to mind easily.
Right.
But the surprising and pretty sobering fact is that there are about twice as many gun suicides as homicides in the U.S.
Wow, twice as many. Okay.
Suicides just aren't reported as vividly or frequently, so the media coverage makes homicides much more available in our minds, distorting our perception of the actual risk.
That makes sense. Vivid events stick with us.
Exactly. Things like a tornado, which gets lots of coverage, leads us to overestimate its probability. Meanwhile, something less dramatic but statistically more common, like dying from an asthma attack,
Which is way more common. Right.
20 times more common than dying from a tornado. but it's underestimated because it's less available in our memory.
And that has real-world consequences for things like buying insurance.
Definitely. Insurance purchases for floods or earthquakes spike right after an event happens nearby.
Because it's fresh in your mind.
Exactly. And then it declines steadily as the memory fades. Even if the objective risk hasn't changed at all, our feelings about risk are heavily swayed by recent vivid events.
Okay, next up, representativeness.
Yeah.
You call this the similarity heuristic. What's that about?
This is where we judge the likelihood of something belonging to a category based on how similar it seems to our stereotype or mental image of that category, sometimes ignoring basic probability rules.
Ah, okay. Like the famous Linda the bank teller experiment.
That's the classic example. So people are given a description of Linda. She's 31, single, outspoken, bright, majored in philosophy, concerned with social justice, anti-nuclear activist.
Okay, paints a picture.
Then they're asked to rank the probability of different statements about Linda's current situation, including just bank teller and also bank teller and active in the feminist movement.
And what happens?
Overwhelmingly, people say it's more likely that Linda is a bank teller and active in the feminist movement than just a bank teller.
Wait, that's logically impossible, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because everyone who is a feminist bank teller is also a bank teller. The first group is a subset of the second.
Right. But the description of Linda sounds more like the stereotype of a feminist than just a bank teller, so people go with the more representative description, even though it violates probability. Our similarity judgment overrides logic.
Wow, okay. And then there's unrealistic optimism. I have a feeling this one hits close to home for many of us.
Oh, it's incredibly pervasive. Think about marriage. When couples get married, they almost universally believe their chance of getting divorced is practically zero.
Even if they've been divorced before.
Even then. Same for entrepreneurs starting a business. The actual failure rate is really high, like 50% or more within 5 years.
Yeah.
But ask the founders, and they'll typically estimate their own chance of success at 90 or 100%.
We all think we're the exception.
We do. We're wired with this bias to believe bad things are less likely to happen to us personally, even when the statistics say otherwise.
And that affects risk-taking in daily life.
Right.
Health, jobs.
Absolutely. Health choices, risky career moves, underestimating dangers like drinking problems. Even during the pandemic, some people might have been less careful than they should have been, not out of malice, but because of this inherent optimism about their personal risk.
It's a fundamental part of being human. Okay, next. Loss aversion. Sounds straightforward. We hate losing stuff.
We really, really do. And the key finding is that losing something feels roughly twice as bad as gaining the equivalent thing feels good.
Twice as powerful. That's significant.
It is. This asymmetry explains a lot of behavior that seems irrational otherwise.
Like the coffee mug experiment. That's a famous one.
Classic. You give half the students in a class a free university coffee mug. The other half gets nothing.
Okay.
Then you ask the mug owners how much they'd sell their mug for, and you ask the non-owners how much they'd pay to buy one.
And the owners ask for more?
About twice as much. Once something is ours, even for a few minutes, we value it much more highly than we would have before we owned it. Giving it up feels like a loss.
The endowment effect.
Exactly. It's closely related, and it leads to inertia. In another experiment, students offered a choice between a mug or an equally valued chocolate bar, rarely wanted to switch once they'd been given one, even if they initially preferred the other items slightly. Giving up what you have hurts.
And this applies to policy, like plastic bag charges.
Perfect example. Charging a small fee, say 5 cents, for a plastic bag is way more effective at reducing bag use than offering a 5-cent bonus for bringing your own reusable bag.
Because the fee feels like a loss.
Exactly. People hate losing that nickel or dime. The gain from the bonus just doesn't motivate as much. Frame it as avoiding a loss.
Which leads right into status quo bias, the tendency to just stick with whatever is already happening. Whatever heuristic, as they call it.
It's so true. Think about binge watching Netflix or whatever. The next episode starts automatically unless you actively stop it.
And how often do you just let it roll?
Guilty. You just think, yeah, whatever, and suddenly it's 2 a.m. Or think about magazine subscriptions that auto-renew.
Oh, yeah, or gym memberships. Anything where you have to actively do something to cancel.
Companies absolutely exploit this. If canceling requires effort, calling customer service during specific hours, filling out a form.
The renewal rates are way higher than if you had to actively choose to resubscribe each time.
So it's that combination of loss aversion, not wanting to lose the service, plus just laziness or mindless choosing that makes default options so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, defaults stick.
Okay, so our brains have all these quirks. How do they actually operate day to day? The book uses Daniel Kahneman's famous two systems model.
All right, Kahneman's System 1 and System 2. Thaler and Sunstein prefer slightly different terms. The automatic system and the reflective system.
Automatic being.
Fast, intuitive gut reaction.
Yeah.
Effortless. Think Homer Simpson acting on impulse.
Okay. And reflective.
Slow, deliberate, conscious thought. Effortful calculation. Like Mr. Spock weighing the options logically.
Can you give some examples of them working?
Sure. If I ask you to calculate 411 times 317.
Ugh, definitely reflective system, hard work.
Right. But if you're, say, an experienced driver dodging a pothole, that's your automatic system. You don't consciously calculate the physics, you just react.
Or speaking your native language.
Totally automatic. You're not thinking about verb conjugations, but trying to speak a second language you're still learning. That takes a lot of reflective effort.
And even geniuses have automatic system slip-ups, right? Like Beethoven misplacing his keys.
Exactly. He could compose the Ninth Symphony while deaf, using immense reflective power. But his automatic system could still fumble everyday tasks. We all rely on both, but the automatic system can trip us up when things get tricky.
So a big goal of the book for choice architects is to design things for Homo economicus, for the real humans, not the idealized econs.
That's a major theme. How can we design policies, products, environments so people can rely more on their automatic system without, as they say, getting into terrible trouble?
Make the easy path the good path.
Essentially, yes. Structure choices, so the default, the easy option, the path of least resistance, is also the one that's beneficial in the long run. It's about making things easier, better, maybe even longer lives by designing for how people actually are.
And part of how we actually are involves struggles with self-control, which brings us to Thaler's famous cashew nut story.
Ah, yes, the cashews. A classic illustration. Thaler's hosting a dinner party, puts out a big bowl of cashews beforehand.
Danger zone?
Totally. Guests start munching away, and he realizes they're going to spoil their appetite for the actual dinner. So what does he do? He just takes the bowl away, puts it back in the kitchen.
And the guests' reaction.
They thanked him.
Which is weird from a purely rational econ perspective, right? Fewer options should make you less happy.
Exactly. Econs want more choices. But humans, we recognize our own weakness. It illustrates this internal conflict we all have. The far-sighted planner, your reflective system wanting long-term health, versus the impulsive doer, your automatic system wanting those delicious cashews now.
So Thaler removing the cashews was like a pre-commitment.
Precisely. A commitment strategy. Like Ulysses tying himself to the mast so he couldn't steer towards the siren's fatal song. He knew his future doer self would be tempted.
And the authors did this themselves by calling the book the final edition.
Yep, their own little commitment strategy to stop tinkering. It shows we often know what's good for us long term, but we need help resisting immediate temptation. Pre-commitment is a powerful tool.
But we often underestimate how strong that temptation will be in the moment, don't we?
That's the hot-cold empathy gap. When we're in a cold state, calm and rational, we underestimate how much our desires and decisions will change when we're in a hot state, aroused, tempted, angry, hungry.
Like planning a diet when you're full versus when you're starving and walk past a bakery.
Exactly. We plan for our rational cold self, but then our impulsive hot self takes over. We're surprisingly bad at predicting our own behavior under temptation.
So real-world commitment strategies help bridge that gap, like making bets.
Informal bets can work wonders.
Oh.
Thaler tells how he helped a colleague, David, finish his long-overdue PhD thesis.
Oh.
He had David write him a series of $100 checks, post-dated. If David missed a chapter deadline, Thaler would cash the check and throw a party that David wouldn't be invited to.
Ouch. Did it work?
Perfectly. David finished on time, never missed a deadline. Even though the actual financial reward from the university for finishing was much larger, why did the small bet work better?
Because it was salient. The immediate, concrete prospect of losing $100 to Thaler, plus the social embarrassment, was a much stronger motivator than a distant, abstract gain. Loss aversion and social pressure combined.
Makes sense. And what about things like old-fashioned Christmas savings clubs?
Ah, yes. A fascinating historical example. People would deposit a small amount each week, but crucially, they couldn't withdraw it until November or December, just in time for Christmas shopping.
And they paid Basically zero interest, right? Seems like a terrible deal for an econ.
A peculiarly cruel benefit, as Thaler called it. High hassle, no return. But for humans, it was a brilliant self-control device.
It made it easy to save and hard to spend impulsively.
Exactly. Like an adult piggy bank. It used inertia and restriction to help people reach a goal. Credit cards might have made them seem unnecessary, but saving at 0% is definitely better than spending at 18% interest. Sometimes irrational tools serve a vital psychological purpose. Okay, so armed with this understanding of human psychology, let's look at the architect's toolkit. How do we actually design environments to nudge effectively? First point, choice architecture is inescapable. We keep coming back to this.
It's so fundamental it bears repeating. There's no neutral way to present choices. Think about designing a building where you put the stairs versus the elevator will affect how many people take the stairs.
Or the cafeteria, again, salad bar first or burgers first.
It makes a difference. Even unintentional design choices have effects. So since we have to design these environments, we should be conscious about it and try to design for good outcomes.
Which leads to their mantra, make it easy, reduce friction.
Yes. If you want people to do something, get vaccinated, save money, eat vegetables, make it as easy as possible. Identify the barriers, the friction points, and eliminate them.
They call these barriers channel factors, like in that Yale tetanus shot study.
That's a classic example. They offered students tetanus shots. One group just got information. Another group got the info, plus a campus map with a health center circled. And they were asked to pick a specific time they'd go.
And the map and planning made a difference.
A huge difference. Signups increased 9-fold. Just making the path slightly clearer, reducing that tiny bit of planning friction had a massive impact. Trivial barriers can be huge deterrents.
Wow. And the opposite is true too, right? Bad design creates friction and frustration. Like those doors you're supposed to push, but they have handles that make you want to pull.
Oh, definitely. Thaler mentions the doors at his university with big handles that scream, "Pull me!" but they opened outward. Constant minor frustration. It violates what designers call stimulus-response compatibility. The signal you get should match the action required.
Like a green stop sign. Confusing.
Exactly. Or the Stroop test, trying to say the color of the ink when the word spells a different color, like the word BLUE written in red ink. Your automatic reading impulse conflicts with the task. Good design avoids that conflict.
And these little design flaws are everywhere. TV remotes with tiny volume buttons, confusing stove knobs.
All over the place. Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things, is full of examples. A poorly designed teapot cover is his classic illustration. The key point is, good design often doesn't cost more than bad design. It just requires thinking about the user.
Okay, and a huge part of making things easy involves defaults, the power of doing nothing.
Defaults are incredibly powerful because of inertia and that status quo bias we talked about. If an option is pre-selected, many people just go with it.
We saw that with automatic enrollment for retirement.
Huge impact there. Another example. Setting the default thermostat temperature slightly lower at the OECD headquarters led to significant energy savings.
But they found there's a limit, right, if the default is too uncomfortable.
Yes. When they tried lowering it by 2 degrees Celsius instead of 1, people actively pushed back and reset their thermostats. So humans will reject a default if it causes real discomfort, but otherwise we tend to accept it.
And companies know this, like Google Mail having nudging is on by default for reminders.
That's a perfect example of modern libertarian paternalism. Easy to turn off, but defaulted on because they think it's helpful. Even simple things like London painting look right on the pavement for pedestrians.
Oh yeah, for tourists, used to different traffic patterns.
It's a simple default visual cue to prevent accidents. Very effective.
So defaults are powerful, but what about situations with just too many choices? How do architects structure complex decisions?
This is where they use the curator analogy. A good museum curator doesn't just dump everything on display. They select and arrange a manageable number of items.
Right.
Good choice architects do the same. Less is often more.
Because too many options can lead to paralysis.
Exactly. Or just bad choices made quickly out of frustration. They use the example of Jane looking for an apartment versus choosing an office.
Right. Choosing between 3 offices, she can carefully weigh everything, a compensatory strategy.
But finding an apartment in a huge city, impossible to compare every single one on all features. So she uses elimination by aspects.
Like setting cutoffs, must be under this rent, within this commute distance, must allow pets.
Right. You filter down the options until you have a manageable set. Then you might compare those more carefully. The way choices are structured is crucial when the set is large.
Paint stores are a good example of helpful structure.
Imagine if they just listed thousands of paint colors alphabetically. A nightmare.
Totally unusable.
Instead, they use color wheels, arranged by similarity, provide samples. Technology helps too, with online tools suggesting complementary colors. It simplifies a complex choice by organizing it intuitively.
And online services like Amazon or Netflix use collaborative filtering.
Yeah, people who bought this also bought, or because you watch this. It uses the choices of similar people to narrow down vast catalogs. It's a really powerful way to handle overwhelming choice sets.
But you raised a good point earlier. Is there a downside to this curation? Does it limit serendipity or create filter bubbles?
That's the potential drawback, yeah. If you're only ever shown things similar to what you already like, do you miss out on discovering something new and different?
Like only reading news that confirms your existing views.
Exactly. So the authors suggest that public-spirited choice architects, maybe librarians, educators, news curators, should think about nudging people occasionally outside their comfort zones. Maybe suggest a book from a different genre or an article with a different perspective. Balance efficiency with exploration.
That's a thoughtful point. Okay, last tool in the toolkit, and maybe the most fun. Making it fun.
It sounds simple, but tapping into our desire for play can be incredibly effective. Remember Mark Twain's definition. Work is whatever a body is obliged to do. Play is whatever a body is not obliged to do.
Right. If you can make something feel like play.
People might even pay to do it.
Like the Fun Theory piano stairs in the Stockholm subway.
The perfect example. They turned regular stairs next to an escalator into a giant working piano keyboard.
And people actually use the stairs more.
66% more people chose the stairs. Just for the fun of it. It wasn't easier, it was just more enjoyable. It turned a chore into play.
How does that apply to less fun things, like, say, dog waste?
Well, New Taipei City had a lottery. If you deposited your dog's waste in special bins, you got a lottery ticket.
A lottery for poop?
Yep. Top prize was equivalent to about $2,000 in gold. And they reported it cut fecal pollution on the streets in half.
Incredible. Gamification works.
It can. Even for health stuff. One study found offering employees a 25% chance to win $100 increased participation in health risk assessments by 20%. Small, fun incentives beat inertia.
And the Dutch postal code lottery plays on regret?
Yeah, they announce winning postal codes, and even if you didn't play, you see what you would have won if you had. That fear of missing out, that potential regret, is a powerful motivator.
And things like frequent flyer miles, they feel different than cash, right? A guilt-free pleasure.
Exactly. A cash bonus might feel like it should go towards bills, but miles or points feel like a treat, a free trip you wouldn't otherwise buy.
Yeah.
England used a similar reward system successfully for recycling. The moral is simple: make it fun or make it feel like a guilt-free reward.
Okay, let's see these tools in action. Real-world challenges, starting with money, showing you the money, and financial well-being. The shift away from traditional pensions to 401ks was huge.
Massive. Old defined benefit pensions were easy for employees. You work there long enough, you get a set income in retirement. But they were costly for employers and not portable.
So 401ks came along defined contribution plans.
Right. Portable, customizable, but suddenly the burden shifted entirely to the employee. You had to actively enroll, decide how much to save, choose investments, manage it for decades. It was a huge cognitive load dumped on millions of people.
Which leads to the obvious question, are people actually saving enough? It seems hard.
It is hard. And economists argue about what enough even means. But for many, the answer seems to be no. A big part of the problem was just getting people enrolled in the first place.
The friction of the forms, the sludge.
Exactly. Those enrollment forms were often complex. People put them aside, meant to get to them later, never did. The obvious solution, which came from behavioral insights, was just make enrollment the default. Opt out instead of opt in.
And the Madrian and Shea studies showed how powerful that was.
A landmark study. At a company with opt-in, only 49% enrolled. They switched to automatic enrollment.
And participation jumped too.
86%. Only 14% actively chose to opt out. Just flipping the default nearly doubled participation. Inertia is powerful.
But automatic enrollment had its own problems, didn't it? The default settings weren't always great.
That was the catch. The default savings rate was often really low, maybe 3%. And the default investment was often something super conservative, like a money market fund.
Okay, for someone near retirement, maybe, but terrible for a young person needing growth.
Exactly. So people who were passively enrolled might end up saving too little and too conservatively. The nudge wasn't quite right.
So how did they fix that nudge?
That's where Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi developed Save More Tomorrow. or SMART. A really clever plan.
What's the idea behind SMART?
It cleverly uses several psychological principles. People want to save more but find it hard. Procrastination, self-control. It's easier to commit to saving in the future. Loss aversion is key. People hate seeing their paycheck go down.
So SMART links savings increases to pay raises.
Precisely. You sign up once, and then every time you get a pay raise, a portion of that raise automatically goes toward increasing your 401k contribution. Your actual take-home pay never drops. It just goes up by slightly less than your full raise.
Brilliant. It harnesses inertia and loss aversion for good.
It's been incredibly successful where implemented. And inertia is a huge factor in investing generally.
Right.
People tend to buy high, sell low, react emotionally. Look at the Swedish pension system example.
Where they offered hundreds of funds.
456 funds, a bewildering choice. What did most people do? They stuck with the default fund.
And that Allura scandal in Sweden. That shows extreme inertia, right? Even with clear signs of fraud.
It's unbelievable. The CEO bought Sweden's most expensive house, a helicopter. Fraud allegations surfaced. The government stopped new investments in their funds.
And investors.
Barely reacted. A week after the news broke, only 1.4% had sold their shares. Even after their auditor resigned and reported them, only 16.5% had moved their money months later. People just didn't act. Inertia is incredibly sticky.
That's sobering. But a key question, does automatic enrollment actually create new savings, or do people just shuffle money from other accounts?
That's crucial. Studies, particularly from Denmark and the U.S. military using detailed data, found that automatic enrollment leads almost entirely to new savings. There wasn't a corresponding increase in debt or decrease in other savings.
So it genuinely boosts overall saving.
It seems so. Well-designed nudges can create real additional financial security.
But what about the huge number of workers, especially in the U.S., who don't even have access to an employer plan? That's a massive gap.
It's a huge problem, yeah. About half of U.S. workers lack access. The best way to save is often having it taken out of your paycheck automatically.
So what's the solution there?
The U.K. created a system called NEST, National Employment Savings Trust, back in 2008. It requires all employers who don't offer their own plan to automatically enroll their workers into NEST.
Mandatory auto-enrollment for everyone. How did that go over?
Remarkably well. Opt-out rates have been consistently low, under 10%, even as the default contribution rates have gradually increased over time up to 8%. It's brought millions into retirement saving. It shows that system-level nudges can work on a massive scale.
Okay, let's shift gears to credit cards. Over $1 trillion in debt in the U.S., China even higher. Clearly a big issue.
Huge. And credit cards are different from mortgages. With a mortgage, the choice of the loan is critical. With credit cards, for people carrying debt, it's often more about usage, how you manage payments and balances.
And they make self-control really hard because spending feels disconnected from pay.
Absolutely. That study showing people would pay twice as much for basketball tickets with a card versus cash is telling. It lubricates spending.
Was the Card Act in the U.S. a nudge-inspired policy?
Very much so. The 2009 Card Act was behaviorally informed. It protected consumers from things like sudden interest rate hikes, excessive fees, confusing terms. It saved consumers billions annually, especially helping those with lower credit scores who are most vulnerable. Smart regulation using behavioral insights.
But even people with excellent credit, super prime borrowers, apparently pay a lot in late fees. Why?
Simple absent-mindedness. Forgetting the due date. About 20% of all late fee revenue came from these folks with great credit and income. They just forgot.
So a simple nudge like setting up autopay could save them money.
Exactly. It's a straightforward sludge buster for forgetfulness.
And you mentioned the Tally app as a kind of user engine. How does that work?
Yeah, Tally is interesting because it doesn't help you choose a card. It helps you manage the cards you have. If you have balances on multiple cards, it figures out the optimal payment strategy, usually paying down the highest interest card first.
How do they make money?
They effectively consolidate your debt, borrowing money at a lower rate than your credit card interest, pay off your high-interest cards, and you pay Tally back, typically at a rate somewhere in between, saving you money overall while they take a small cut. It's like an automated financial helper nudge.
Clever. Okay, from cards to mortgages, way more complex now than they used to be.
Oh, yeah. Used to be pretty simple. Fixed rate, 20% down, find the lowest APR. Now, variable rates, interest only, teaser rates that jump up, points, prepayment penalties. It's bewildering.
And competition doesn't necessarily fix it because of shrouded attributes.
Right. Unlike gas prices, which are posted clearly, the true long-term cost of a complex mortgage can be hidden in the fine print, the shrouded attributes. Less scrupulous lenders or brokers can exploit this complexity.
Brokers might have incentives not aligned with the borrower.
Exactly. Their commission might be based on the loan's profitability to the lender, which could mean steering borrowers towards more complex, higher-cost loans, especially if the borrower seems less sophisticated. This definitely played a role in the 2008 crisis.
And this complexity hits less educated or less savvy shoppers harder, worsening inequality.
It absolutely does. So the authors propose nudges. First, easy mortgages.
Like standardized, simple options.
Yeah, maybe just a few types, fixed or variable, 15 or 30-year, with clear standard terms, no hidden fees, easy to compare, like beginner slopes at a ski resort, a safe, transparent option.
And for everything else, the non-easy ones. A mortgage file.
Right. Smart disclosure require all the complex details of any non-easy mortgage to be in a standardized, machine-readable electronic format.
So comparison websites or apps could easily analyze and compare them, like Kayak for mortgages?
Precisely. This would dramatically increase transparency and help people find the genuinely best deal, potentially reducing disparities faced by groups who often pay more due to information gaps.
Okay, moving beyond finance to saving lives and the planet. Organ donation are really sensitive and important area.
Definitely. The goal is saving lives while respecting choices. There's a common belief that countries with presumed consent, where you're assumed to be a donor unless you opt out, have much higher donation rates just because of that law.
But the authors argue that's mostly an illusion.
Yeah, it's more complicated. They distinguish hard presumed consent, organs taken regardless of family, which is very rare, from soft presumed consent. Families always asked. Their wishes respected, much more common.
So in practice, even in opt-out countries, the family usually still has the final say.
In most cases, yes. Which means someone who simply failed to opt out isn't treated that differently from someone in an opt-in country who never registered. The family still gets consulted. So the default isn't as powerful or clear-cut as it seems.
So just changing the law to opt out might not be the magic bullet.
It might be a distraction. Mandated choice, forcing people to say yes or no on a form, can even backfire sometimes. The real success story seems to be the Spanish model.
What makes Spain so successful? It's not just the law.
No, their success is attributed mainly to incredible organization and infrastructure. They have dedicated organ donation coordinators in hospitals, extensive training, robust systems for identifying potential donors and talking to families respectfully, efficient logistics. It's the whole system, not just the default rule.
So the real nudge is building that efficient, supportive system.
That seems to be the key lesson. Focus on best practices, making registration easy and salient, good communication, rather than just fiddling with the default law, which might not change much on the ground.
Got it. Now, the biggest challenge of all, saving the planet. Climate change is the ultimate tragedy of the commons.
Exactly. Like herders sharing a common pasture, each has an incentive to add more cows for personal gain, but collectively they destroy the pasture. With climate, every nation, every individual benefits from using fossil fuels, but collectively we destabilize the climate for everyone.
And the free rider problem makes it worse.
Yeah, why should my country cut emissions if others won't, and I'll still suffer the consequences? It leads to inaction. Public goods experiments show cooperation often breaks down without some kind of enforcement or shared rules.
Plus, the historical equity argument, developing nations saying wealthy nations cause the problem.
Which adds another layer of complexity to negotiations. Nobel laureate William Nordhaus suggested climate clubs as one way forward.
How would those work?
Countries join the club, agree to certain emission reduction targets, the rules, members get benefits, maybe preferential trade terms. But if a member fails to meet its targets, or if a country refuses to join and play by the rules, they face penalties, like tariffs on their goods from club members.
Adding consequences for free riding.
Exactly. Experiments show that adding punishment mechanisms drastically increases cooperation in these kinds of games.
What about direct economic nudges, like carbon taxes? Sweden seems to have had success.
Sweden's experience is compelling. They have a high carbon tax, around $130 per metric ton. Since implementing it, their GDP grew significantly, while emissions fell by over 25%. It shows decoupling is possible.
And the authors suggest a green, more tomorrow approach.
Yeah, start the tax low and schedule gradual increases over time. That makes it politically easier to enact and gives businesses time to adapt, harnessing that same psychology as save more tomorrow.
Subsidies for green tech, like electric cars, are another approach, maybe more politically palatable.
They are, but often end up being a bit of a patchwork and still have costs. Regulation and disclosure are also key tools. There's the energy paradox. People underinvest in energy efficiency even when it saves money long term.
Because the upfront cost looms large.
Right. So mandatory energy labels on appliances help. Building codes mandating insulation are effective because it's cheapest during construction. And disclosure can be powerful.
Like the Toxics Release Inventory, TRI in the U.S.
A huge success story for social nudges. After the Bhopal disaster, the U.S. required companies to publicly report their emissions of hazardous chemicals. No direct fines, just disclosure.
And companies reduced emissions? Why?
Bad publicity. Environmental groups created blacklists. Newspapers reported on local polluters. Companies hated being on those lists, so they significantly reduced emissions simply due to social pressure and reputation management. Transparency worked as a powerful nudge.
So a similar greenhouse gas inventory for climate emissions could have a similar effect.
That's the proposal. Require major emitters to disclose their CO2 emissions publicly. It could spur competition to reduce emissions and avoid negative attention.
And green defaults for energy supply,
Right.
making clean energy the standard option.
The impact there is massive. Remember the German example. Opt in for green energy, got about 7% uptake. Make green energy the default.
Did jump to nearly 70%.
69.1%. Most people just stick with the default. Huge emission reductions resulted simply from flipping the switch. It's probably one of the biggest potential nudges for climate change.
And even simple social comparison, like the O-Power Home Energy reports.
Yeah, just showing you how your energy use compares to your neighbors, using smiley faces or frowny faces. It leads to about a 2% reduction on average, at almost zero cost, just by tapping into our desire to keep up or not be wasteful compared to peers.
Okay, let's turn to the complaints department. People do raise objections to nudging. The first offense is nudges are inevitable anyway.
It's the fundamental starting point. Objecting to being nudged is like objecting to breathing air. Choice architecture is everywhere, influencing us constantly, whether intentionally or not. So the real question isn't if we should nudge, but how to do it well, ethically and transparently.
And nudges are preferred over mandates precisely because they preserve choice and limit the power of potentially fallible choice architects.
Exactly. If you're worried about government mistakes, focus on coercion first, not gentle nudges you can easily ignore or opt out of.
But there is a dark side. #sludge. What exactly is sludge?
Sludge is basically the evil twin of a nudge. It's friction, hassle, complexity deliberately introduced into a process to make it harder for you to get something you want or are entitled to.
With making it incredibly difficult to unsubscribe from a service.
Classic sludge. Requiring phone calls during limited hours, navigating confusing website menus, or mail-in rebates that are intentionally hard to redeem.
Only 10–40% get redeemed. That's terrible.
It's designed that way. Hidden fees on hotel bills, bank accounts, expensive printer ink, those shrouded attributes are also sludge. They make the true cost hard to see, often hitting loyal or inattentive customers the hardest.
And government is a prime sludge producer too, financial aid forms.
Notoriously sludgy. The Bainarski experiment proved that simply pre-filling aid forms for eligible low-income students dramatically increased college applications and enrollment. Removing the sludge had a huge impact.
TSA lines at airports.
Massive sludge. While pre-check and global entry are sludge busters, the time cost of security for everyone else is enormous. Or those EU cookie banners, often designed to make rejecting tracking nearly impossible. That's sludge forcing consent.
And the U.S. tax code. Maybe the king of sludge.
Arguably, yes. 108 pages of instructions for the basic form. Average 13 hours and $200 to file. Compare that to Sweden, where most people file in minutes on their phone using pre-filled data.
Why don't we have that in the U.S.?
Lobbying. Tax preparation companies like Intuit have successfully lobbied Congress to forbid the IRS from offering a simple, free, pre-filled filing system. They profit from the sludge.
That's infuriating. And sludge prevents people from getting benefits they deserve, like the earned income tax credit.
Right. About 20% of eligible low-income families miss out because of the paperwork hassle. Sludge has real costs, especially for the vulnerable. And implementing something complex like a wealth tax would involve, as the others say, mountains of sludge just to figure out valuations.
Okay, another common complaint. The slippery slope. If we allow nudges, won't it lead to shoves, then mandates, then authoritarianism?
It's a classic argument. First they nudge you to eat broccoli, then they mandate it. Justice Scalia famously used the broccoli example against the Affordable Care Act.
But the counter is that nudging is fundamentally about avoiding shoves.
That's core principle. A nudge, by definition, must be easy to opt out of or ignore. It preserves freedom of choice. If you can't easily say no, it's not a nudge, it's a mandate or coercion. So the libertarian aspect is the built-in brake against that slippery slope.
What about required choosing? Sometimes forcing a choice seems reasonable, like organ donation on a driver's license form.
The authors agree it can be appropriate for simple binary choices like that. But they argue against it for highly complex decisions, like choosing from 456 mutual funds.
Because people might just choose badly under pressure, or prefer not to choose at all.
Exactly. People often rationally choose not to choose, preferring to rely on a default or expert advice. Forcing them to become their own financial planner when they wouldn't be forced to be their own doctor seems inconsistent.
And the debate between education or boosting versus nudging, do we have to pick one?
No, they're not mutually exclusive. Many nudges are educational, like calorie labels. But the evidence on financial literacy training alone is mixed. Effects are often small, fade quickly, and work best only when delivered just in time, right before a decision.
So education is good, but often not enough on its own.
Right. Nudges are often needed to help translate knowledge into action, overcoming inertia and bias. You can't just expect high school classes to solve complex behavioral challenges.
Which brings us to the big ethical question. Are nudges manipulative?
It's the core concern. Philosophers generally define manipulation as something that doesn't respect a person's capacity for rational thought. By that standard, most nudges, reminders, warnings, clear defaults are not manipulative.
Because they're transparent. You can see the nudge.
Yes, the design is usually in plain sight. Even if the psychological mechanism isn't obvious to everyone, it's not like subliminal advertising, which bypasses conscious awareness, that would be manipulative and isn't considered libertarian paternalism.
So where's the line? What about putting unflattering mirrors near desserts versus flattering mirrors in clothing stores?
That's where it gets tricky. The publicity principle is a good test. Would the choice architect be willing to publicly defend the nudge? If it feels sneaky or exploitative, it probably crosses the line. Transparency and ease of opting out, one-click paternalism, are key safeguards. Sometimes, like with cooling off periods for high-pressure sales, a bit of friction against a bad decision is justified.
Okay, looking ahead, what's the future of nudging beyond specialized units?
The authors hope and see signs that behavioral insights are becoming mainstream, just part of good policy design for the start, not an add-on.
Like the architect Raphael Vignoli designing the Chicago Booth School of Business.
A fantastic example. He consciously designed the physical space to nudge behavior, putting faculty offices high up, but connecting floors with open stairwells to encourage random interactions, designing the cafeteria layout to subtly steer people past the salad bar first.
Baking the nudges right into the architecture.
Exactly. That's where the biggest potential lies, integrating choice architecture thoughtfully from the very beginning of any design process, whether it's a building, a website, or a government program.
So after this deep dive, what's the big takeaway for us?
I think it's recognizing the enormous, often hidden power that choice architecture has in our lives, for good or ill. It's everywhere. It's unavoidable.
So the question isn't if we're being nudged, but how we can nudge ourselves and our systems for better outcomes.
Right. It's really a call to be more intentional. We can design our environments, our routines, our policies to make it easier to make choices that align with our long-term goals, acknowledging our very human tendencies.
It's about nudging for good.
Precisely. And now that you, listening, are more aware of how you're being nudged every day, here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay.
What's one piece of sludge in your own life, some frustrating form, a hard-to-cancel subscription, a confusing process that you could try to eliminate or work around?
Good question.
Or conversely, what's one small, simple nudge you could set up for yourself, or maybe for your family or colleagues, to make a better decision easier? Maybe rearranging your fridge, setting up an automatic bill payment, putting your running shoes by the door, just one small thing. Think about it.
A great challenge to end on. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this was as fascinating for you as it was for us. Until next time.